G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to be taking a look at another past hero of the month, specifically the 5-star legendary green hero, Mortis, the Deadly Guerilla Champion. So Mortis has been around for a while now. He first came into PuzzleCombat as the featured hero of the month back in June 2021. Today, however, the only way you can get Mortis is when you summon him from the Manor of Legends portal, which comes once every 4 weeks. This portal does, however, have some pretty terrible odds when you're going after a specific hero. Better when they're featured, but pretty bad still. So to have a quick look at that, so the appearance rates, we have a 1% chance of getting a featured past hero of the month and a 0.9% chance of getting one of the unfeatured past heroes of the month. So for perspective, if you were to do 100 summons in this portal, there is a 63.4% probability to get either of the two featured heroes of the month. If you're going up there's also a 59.5% probability of getting one of the unfeatured heroes. However, if you're targeting a specific one of the two heroes, so if a specific featured hero, say Mortis, you've only got a 39.5% probability of getting that specific one when they're featured, and only a 2.6% probability on 100 summons of getting a specific unfeatured hero of the month. So note that that number will get progressively worse as more heroes are added to this portal. So yeah, not a great set of odds, really. Let's take a quick look-see at Mortis's artwork. So I do kind of rate the artwork. I think it's pretty cool. He's got a Special Forces mask going on with the skull and crossbones, sort of like that Punisher-esque sort of thing. Got the camo that's, absolutely necessary for being a guerrilla warfare hero. I could totally have made the joke about, what artwork? There's nobody here because he's wearing camo and all of that, but, I'm totally not a complete child, so that's why I didn't do it. No, so it is pretty cool artwork. I rate it, so feel free to pause it if you want to examine in more detail, but let's keep checking out Mortis. So being a past hero of the month, as with every other hero of the month, Mortis doesn't actually have a family bonus. There's nothing written in on the side of his card here. Maybe SGG will add something down the track, but at this stage in time, there's nothing. But yeah, we never know what the future might hold. His personal stats, Mortis comes in with 670 attack, 719 defense, and 1,385 HP. So there is a little bit of a skew going towards that defense stat. Not a massive one, but it is a slight skewing there. It is worth noting as well, his power is quite low. That's on the back of him having been so old, really. So he's not a new hero by any metric. So yeah, as a result, his total stat distribution is quite low. That's what the power essentially is. His charge speed is 50 speed, which means that it needs 10 tiles to charge or 5 ghosted tiles. The speed break does need to get to +8, which is very difficult to actually do in green. The only way you can get a speed break is if you equip the +6 Relic Hunter Bargo with the 2% charge generation node on his class tree. And even then, it only just gets you over the line. So it has to be both of those two things. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both. So if you do want to speed break Mortis, the speed node is very relevant in that situation. Speaking of his class, Mortis is a member of the Warfighter class, which we can see there, which grants him the chance to revive with 1% HP after taking what would normally be a fatal set of attack damage. The Warfighter talent, it is pretty busted, both proven and unproven. Historically, it can very much change a battle, just with one chance revive coming in at the wrong time and then casting their special skill. So it is something that I advise putting at least +1 on these heroes just to at least activate that chance to revive. And yeah, as I said, it's got a bit of a sordid history. There's been both proven bugs, which SGG have acknowledged and quote-unquote fixed, and there's still allegations of it being bugged to this day. I mean, I literally faced a recon hero just before and they revived, I kid you not, 9 times in a row, which is pretty broken. But anyway, so yeah, very, very good talent tree. So by way of a specific emblem path, I have got emblems on my Mortis, and we'll take a quick look at what I've done. So I went an attack path on Mortis, and I picked up defense as the secondary priority when I had to choose between the two paths. So we can see I've gone the attack route, I've picked up attack again. Here I went for defense and HP because that healing node is hot garbage, so does pretty much stuff all, so we just went the other way to at least get 2 useful nodes. Then we went and picked up more attack, and I stopped mine at plus 16 just because there's only one more attack node, which is all the way down at plus 20, and I just didn't feel like going any further than that. So plus 16 gets me one final attack node at only one more set of emblems, whereas if I'd go on the other route, I'd have to go 2 more sets of emblems to get there. But if you want to, and as I said, if you're wanting to go all the way down and actually speed break Mortis, you do need to pick up that speed node. So the emblem tree, if you were to go all the way, would look like this, and I still would probably stop at plus 19 even then. I wouldn't go to the plus 20. So yeah, that's an emblem path for Mortis. Yeah, cool. Head back over to the portal and we can take a look at his special skill. So his special skill is titled multi-kill or multi-kill, and at level 10 skill and 50 charge speed, it will deal 160% damage to all enemies. Each hit has a 35% chance to deal critical damage, and it's got a little note there saying that critical unaffected by critical chance modifiers, so they finally actually clarified that, but we'll get to that in a second. And enemies that receive critical damage also get a 240 HP bleed over 3 turns. So yeah, so his skill, that's what it is now. Just for a little bit of extra history, just for the fun of it, Mortis used to be a lot better. So back in November 2021, Mortis was unfortunately subject to some balance changes in the negative direction. So all 3 aspects of his special skill were ultimately reduced. So his damage used to be 170% and now it's 160. His crit chance was dropped from 42% down to the current 35%, and the bleed damage took a hammering, going from 309 down to 240 HP bleed. So at the time, maybe it was warranted. I personally don't think so, and I believe I didn't think so at the time. But it's pretty laughable, really, if you look at it from a modern perspective. Like, you look at some of the current heroes that are being released, and you go, did Mortis really need those reductions? Probably not. So, I don't know. That's all history now. There's nothing that can be done about it unless SGG takes the unprecedented stance and reverses their balance changes. But let's take a bit more of a detailed look at what Mortis actually does in his current standing, starting with that direct damage. So, damage, as always in these videos, I say it, but damage is hard to consistently calculate because there's a lot of variability that feeds into the damage calculation. So what I do, which is analogous to the hero's final damage output, is I just calculate their attack power. So that's their attack stat multiplied by their percentage in their skill. And in the case of Mortis, we can see he comes in with an attack power of 1072. If we normalize that with his 10 tiles to charge speed, he comes in with an attack power per tile of 107. So yeah, we can see him there, comes in number 5 of the 8 DOA 5 options. A pretty sizable step back from some of the best options like Jade and Jack, and even, Royden hitting armored enemies. But it's kind of in line with the majority of the green DOA 5 hitters. You've kind of got like the 2 best ones way out in front, and then you've got like everyone else in a bit of a clump. So yeah, so while Mortis, he is coming in at number 5, he's in a very tight pack with the rest of the DOA 5 green hitters. So yeah, it's pretty good. Considering his age as well, it's not too bad. Like, you've got a much more recent hero, Grunt, coming in with only 112 attack power per tile. Jade is the most recent green hero added to the game at the time of this review, and she comes in with 203 attack power per tile. So there is like a new versus old sort of setup, but Mortis is still reasonably good in the scheme of all of the green DOA 5 hitting options. But that's just his base damage as well. The really interesting thing about Mortis is this crit damage line. So the line reads that each hit has a 35% chance to deal critical damage. So it's not the clearest of wording, and it does lead to a fair bit of confusion around what actually can do crit damage normally. So typically, crit damage only can proc on what is called normal damage. So this is tile damage, slash attacks, and minion strikes, essentially. Mortis here is a bit of a special case, where he's doing crit damage, but it's also completely separate from your traditional crit damage. So it's poorly worded. SGG really could have clarified it if all they'd said was he deals double damage, because that's effectively what it is. So crit damage is just 2x the calculated damage. So in the case of Mortis, if his skill is hitting for normally 250 damage when the damage calculation calculates it all through, the crit hits will be doing 500 damage. Simple as that. So all things being equal, if you take a long-term average, there's a 35% chance to do double damage, so it's effectively a 70% improvement on his base damage output. But RNG means that you could have every hit crit, or you could have literally none of them crit for an entire battle. So because everything is calculated independently, nothing flows on and indicates or influences any of the other hits. So couple things just to note in addition to all of that. So the first thing is it's not affected by crit chance modifiers. So this is something I consistently have to explain. Crit chance is just applying to normal damage. It only applies to tiles, minion strikes, and slash attacks. So weapons like, what's a good crit weapon that people might know about? The Master Weapon Quest guns, right? They've got a crit chance in them. Does not affect Mortis in any way. Crit buffs like you get on Zigzag or even Sarah do not affect Mortis in any way. So crit chance does not affect Mortis. However, crit damage effects do affect Mortis. So specifically, there's an example which I will show you, which is the Evergreen Buffalo. A bit of a niche weapon that not many people actually use, but it grants 25% additional crit damage. So essentially, instead of it doing 200% damage or double damage, it does 2.25 times damage instead. So a little bit confusing, but crit damage modifiers like the Evergreen Buffalo, these do affect Mortis, but crit chance modifiers do not affect Mortis. The other thing to note is that unlike regular crit damage, it's not affected at all by elemental modifiers. So skill damage is not affected by elements. So like the weakness of purple against yellow, purple against purple, or green against blue, green against red. So those weaknesses don't apply to special skills unless it's specifically stated in the skills itself. So yeah, a couple of things to note with it, but yeah, really, really interesting effect. It is completely unique. There is no other hero that does crit damage on their special skill. And yeah, it is a little bit confusing because it's still not crit damage necessarily. It's kind of like double damage rather than a traditional crit. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. So the final part of Mortis' skill, which we can take a look at, is the bleed. So that's the bit where it says enemies that received critical damage also get 240 bleed damage over 3 turns. So it is extra damage, all right? So on top of the base damage and then the crit damage, there's also this 240 bleed damage over 3 turns. It is a little bit disappointing, the magnitude, because pretty well all 5-star heroes that do DOT ailments, bleed or burn or poison, they're doing it at roughly 309 damage over 3 turns, or 103 damage per tick. That's what Mortis used to be. right? He used to be 309 over 3 turns. Now, however, he's only 240 over 3 turns, which means his turn-based tick has gone from 103 damage per turn down to 80 damage per turn. So that's kind of the big letdown with Mortis's bleed damage. The other thing to note about it is, as with all DOT effects, it is heavily influenced by the special skill level of the hero. So each special skill level, so in this case it's 10 out of 10, but each special skill that you go down from 10, it drops the bleed off by 15 over the 3 turns. So at 6 out of 10 skill, a point where you're not actually committed any 5-star skill books, the bleed is just 180 over 3 turns, not the 240. So it is a substantial drop-off when you sort of scale back from 10 out of 10. But overall, I do still think that Mortis is a pretty decent hero. He was kind of a great hero back in the day, but unfortunately he ran afoul of one of the very few nerfs or set of balance changes that SGG has actually bothered doing in PuzzleCombat. So today, he's still an okay hero, alright? He's not terrible. He's probably a little bit behind the 8 ball when you compare him to some of the more modern heroes who just have a higher flat damage output compared to him, and they also typically have more secondary effects than what Mortis does. Mortis's secondary effects are all tied to this 35% crit chance. So I do personally, I still use Mortis a fair bit. I use him semi-regularly in wartime as a supporting damage dealer on my war teams, particularly when I'm facing blue tanks. So as part of a green stack. I do really like the crit damage aspect. I think it is, because it's unique, it would be interesting if it was rolled out to more heroes. But I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I'm kind of a bit indifferent towards it, on going towards the like it side of things, just because it is double damage, or double is normal damage. So as a sort of more general comment over the whole green heroes, it applies to all green heroes, but normally there's these opportunities to bolster DOA hitters by combining them with an AoE defense down or elemental defense down. Green is quite lacking in that regard. There's no AoE 5 option. The best options you've got is a Yuumi or Whack, who do AoE 3 defense down effects. So it does mean that there's that missing combination to really enhance Mortis and every other DOA hitter. But it's still, I mean, it affects all of the green AoE hitters. It's not just like it's unique to Mortis. So anyway, I'm sort of waffling a bit. So at this stage, Mortis's grading, he is going to get a B grade for war and raid attacks. I still do think he has his uses, predominantly as a supporting damage dealer. So you kind of like fire Mortis first, and then you sort of use your snipers to pick off heroes that have, you know, copped that crit damage and that bleed sort of thing. For War Machines, I'm only going to give him a C-. He doesn't have too many applications for War Machines. Eventing, I'm going to give him a C+. He's okay damage output wise, but not great. So there's a lot of better options you can use for events, both in competition and in completing the events. For raid and war defenses, I'm going to give him a C+. He's not the greatest option anymore. There was a time when he was an absolute fantastic wing or flank hero. He's still probably usable in those positions, but there's definitely a lot better green options running around these days than Mortis. In the 3 tournament settings, so on Bloody Battle, I'm going to give him a B grade for attack and a C+ for defense. On buff boosters, I'm going to give him a B- on attack and a C grade on defense. He kind of loses out. He's not a buff boosting hero in any fashion. And then in the charged attacks, because he goes from 50 speed up to 65, I am going to bump his grading up to being a B+ on attack and a C- on defense. So overall for Mortis, that comes in as being a B- for his overall attack grade and a C+ for his overall defense grade. And that concludes the content for this review of Mortis. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback, so feel free, jump down to the comments section, leave me a note. I try to read and respond to as many of you as I can. If you did enjoy this video and found it to be useful, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel and all of that, but most importantly, share this content around, because chances are, if it's useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the other people that you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me for this review. I do hope that I'll see you again soon, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!